Jarvis. I'm with Realized Worth on the business side, but RW Institute, that's the think tank that sponsors the Listen Up show. We do these the second Wednesday of every month, same time, same place. And we have guests from around the world who have interesting insights that aren't maybe normally mainstream discussed. And I'm really thrilled to have Jeannette. Jeannette is the Executive Vice President of Corporate Affairs, Communications, Sustainability, and the CSO for Zoetis. Now, if you haven't heard of Zoetis, you're going to learn a little bit more about it. You're going to love Jeannette. Jeannette, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris, for welcoming me to my first Listen Up show. To start off, great to be here today. If you're not familiar with Zoetis, we are the world's leading animal health company. Zoetis is in the business of predicting, preventing, detecting, and treating animal disease and illness. And we have 11,000 colleagues around the world with products in 100 markets, $7 billion in sales, dedicated to providing the vaccines, the medicines, the diagnostics to veterinarians and farmers and people who care for animals. So we can advance our purpose, which as a company, our purpose is to nurture the world and humankind by advancing care for animals. When we think about how to engage our colleagues in our work across Zoetis, I think it really does start with this fundamental belief that our colleagues make the difference in everything that we do. It is one of our core beliefs to recognize that colleagues make the difference in our business. And importantly, they're integral to it, driving our purpose to nurture the world and humankind by advancing care for animals. So early last year, as background, we launched the company's first sustainability strategy known as Driven to Care. It brings to life our commitment across 3 pillars, namely a focus on communities, a focus on innovating for animals, and a focusing on protecting our planet, and all woven together in support of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we have aspirations and targets embedded throughout our 3 strategic pillars that directly align and support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. When we think about being driven to care, it's really our approach to this interconnectedness amongst the communities and animals and the planet, because ultimately we subscribe to this belief across Zoetis that healthier animals help create a healthier future for all. So we contribute to that by supporting the communities that we operate in. We're innovating in animal health and we're protecting the planet, and our goals address all those areas. But central to our communities pillar is this notion of, supporting our colleagues to cultivate both a safe, inclusive workplace, but also to enable our colleagues to connect with the causes that are important to them. One way is it happens through our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, where our colleagues are now volunteering as part of colleague resource groups. We have stood up 9 colleague resource groups where we bring colleagues together and shared interests and backgrounds and experiences. And part of their work is also in a volunteer effort to work together in our CRGs to advance certain priorities across the business, but also to then connect to communities and communities that align with their mission. We also have seen how unlocking opportunities for our colleague resource groups to be able to give back and leverage our volunteer program. We also partner and support colleagues that care for animals in a localized approach, but realizing how it rolls up to a global impact. Through our programs, we've launched initiatives to provide a volunteer time off policy for all of our full-time colleagues. And that's a policy set by our HR team, but it is within our sustainability team that we actually, enable our colleagues to connect with that benefit. So we're providing access to opportunities to volunteer and give back across the business, and that's driven through our sustainability team. Some of our colleagues that have been out in the field and on the ground during times of important disaster relief. So here you'll see pictured Zoetis's chief medical officer. He's on site, when there are moments of disaster, and we partner with organizations to help us have even greater scale and impact during moments of disaster relief. And the American Humane is one of them. And so as we think about the way we're continuing to advance colleague engagement and volunteerism, it is further connecting with our partners that are going to enable us to unlock that impact on the ground during times of need. But importantly, it also includes how we are also mobilizing additional support. So we have, in our foundation that we established last year, have published a commitment to support nonprofits that align with our mission to advance opportunity for veterinarians and farmers and the people who care for animals. We'll be doing that in the areas of education, well-being, and improved livelihoods, ultimately granting $35 million over 5 years. Chris, those are some of the ways that we are mobilizing impact in the community throughout Zoetis. We've been excited about how quickly we've been able to formalize and organize this work, but ultimately it has truly been woven into our purpose as an organization. It's been woven into our culture. It's woven into our colleague experience.
Perfect. That's great. Do you have a program specifically for employees to work with animals? Is that the the signature program? And if it is, have you chosen one single partner for the program?
In terms of colleague engagement, I'll describe a little bit about our philosophy and how we have organized our volunteer program and our matching gifts program for our global full-time colleagues. I think it's important to add the context that we really stood these programs up in the middle of the pandemic. There was a reflection that we wanted to enable our colleagues to be able to find that space to be able to connect with the causes that are important to them, however they are able to connect with them. And so in some cases, colleagues have had to rely on virtual volunteering opportunities or have had to have some flexibility in terms of how they give back. Maybe they can't give back with a monetary donation and they need to, use volunteer time off to contribute to a nonprofit. And then we give volunteer rewards as a result. So we've created an equitable way for enabling engagement across our colleague base. We also wanted a program that was open enough so that we were supporting the causes that were important to our colleagues. And that certainly has a high representation of animal-related causes, but it also recognizes that people can give back to schools or people can give back to local community initiatives that are important to them. Now, I will say, given Zoetis's purpose, connecting to causes that support animals in need is absolutely important to us. We also, again, use our platform to connect colleagues with other opportunities to support animal care. I think that's the key thing I would highlight here is the platform. Your technology review that you presented earlier is a phenomenal resource that people can take advantage of. When I think back to where we were at the end of 2020, when very quickly as we were launching our sustainability strategy, we recognized that we wanted to formalize how our colleagues could find opportunities to volunteer or enable it through a matching gifts program. We went through an assessment to understand what would be the best platform for us. I wish a resource like that was available at the time. So for everyone that's looking for one, the fact that you can enable that and it sounds like it's free,
It's free.
which is even better, which people pay for access to assessments like that. So we chose Benevity, having a platform that enables you to create a customized and flexible view to speak to the causes that are important to your colleague community is critical. So you can search through our particular platform. You can connect to campaigns and news articles that we're publishing around different animal related causes and resources. So to answer your question, we see a lot of pull in terms of, animal related causes. We've made it so that any colleague can find an opportunity to give back to what's important to them.
Perfect. Okay, so series of quick questions. How do you find opportunities to work with animals during a pandemic?
It's challenging. So what we've seen is a number of grassroots initiatives that have been outstanding. So as an example, we found some of our technology teams and our HR teams came up with their own initiatives to have a virtual dog toy making event, right? You can literally take old t-shirts or old cloths and towels, and you can tie them up. You can make awesome dog toys, and you can donate those to organizations that are accepting toys and in kind for their organization. You can volunteer with organizations that are looking for help to walk a dog for elderly dog owners. And so there are ways to do things with distance that could be also, done safely right now during the height of during the pandemic. And we saw that during the height of the pandemic as well.
Do you have any insights for us on how it could be a little bit more skill-based? When we do work with companies, we're always trying to find a champion who can lead the event. And that requires a number of skills like project management, time management, people management, a whole bunch of things on site afterwards. And that's how we recommend turning things into skill-based volunteering that may not naturally lend itself to that. But it seems like working with animals, you could use a lot of good info, and there may be some skills that are necessarily a part of that. However, I think most people, when they go to the local dog pound, the first job is pick up the poop. It's sort of a graduated approach in working with animals in a skill-based environment, or is that just that's down the road? We just got started during a pandemic. Give me a break.
Well, listen, I think what you've outlined is absolutely spot on. I think a phenomenal evolution of a program in any organization is to unlock ways that you can help colleagues give back in a manner that aligns with their values, but also aligns with their strengths. And I think, that enables colleagues to do their best work. That is definitely on our roadmap, and we want to unlock more of those opportunities. What we've seen in the near term is in the areas of disaster relief. We have teams that will be deployed out to support during moments of disaster where you need veterinarians in, emergency situations, caring for animals that have been affected. We also have an incredibly passionate colleague group that runs our customer care services. And so if you're a veterinarian and you are, your practice has been affected and you've lost product as a result of a disaster, we are going to, in the US, through our customer care program, provide you with replacements and provide you with support and in-kind product donations. And some of that interaction, that's happening off hours, that's happening,
Right.
During moments of distress. The counsel and the care and the guidance that our team provides during those moments is outstanding. And they are also passionate and proud of the work that they do.
Let's pick up a question from Megan Strand. I'd love to hear Jeannette speak a bit more about how you're engaging or collaborating with those CRGs around volunteer activities. Could you give us briefly some kind of examples of how you're doing this?
Yeah, listen, we are looking at it in a holistic way, where we want our colleague resource groups to be enabled to embed community support, within their charters. And we've seen that happen very organically. Every colleague resource group we have at Zoetis, and again, I said, earlier, we have 9 active ones. They have leadership teams, they have subcommittees, and oftentimes they've organized a community-focused subcommittee within the colleague resource group.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
therein lies an opportunity to have a dedicated set of, colleagues who are looking for some of those engagement opportunities. One that we're just so proud of that has moved so quickly in driving phenomenal engagement across our global teams is PAW. And PAW is our group for LGBTQ plus colleagues and allies. And one of the things that they did was they organized a holiday blanket drive where colleagues collected blankets and winter clothes, and they donated them to an organization known as LGBT RAIN, which is a foundation that supports homeless and LGBTQ youth in the area.
Would there be an opportunity in working alongside of those veterinarians in whatever voluntary space to learn about things like pet care, nail cutting? Or is it like we provide services and support to veterinarians, but we typically don't involve employees with that kind of aspect?
Our employees in the field that are working with clinics every day.
And how many employees again for everybody?
So we have 11,000 colleagues across the globe, and we have a high percentage that are out in the field that are responsible for spending time with their customers, hands-on, on-site. And so there is a tremendous amount of collaboration and guidance and training that happens from our technical resources that are on the ground. So
Right.
I think that, part of being an animal health company really is incumbent on our field force to be that counsel and be that guide to our customers in market.
Is there volunteering an angle there?
Yeah, there isn't a formal program in terms of shadowing as you
Okay.
described. It's an interesting question. Likely there has been maybe some exploration of that I'd love to further look into across our field teams.
Yeah, even other companies where there's a large population, but aren't sure the right way to do it or how to get involved beyond, I don't know, I'll Google dog pound or that kind of thing. It seems like a company with your wealth of knowledge, insight, connections, and practice would be a great resource to kind of partner up with. But I don't know, has Zoetis ever partnered with other companies, like peer companies or?
There's a lot of work that's happening just as part of our commercial operation. So I'll give you an example. We've had a longstanding partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which includes opportunities for access and upskilling professionals throughout sub-Saharan Africa to improve the standard of care for livestock farmers. So there are things like that are just organically happening in terms of the normal course of business for some of our international teams.
Danielle asked, I found that skill-based volunteering programs need to be cultivated one-to-one by having conversations with nonprofits, then finding colleagues that need the skills, and then matching. And then have you found ways to kind of scale this or scale like your program? What's worked well for you? Because when it's given to employees to kind of find the nonprofit, set it up, it can be quite intensive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think part of the evolution of the program will be to ensure that we're providing all of the right resources to enable, more colleagues to be able to participate. So I think it's an excellent point. One of the things that we have done that we have found to be a really successful component of how we think about volunteering and even our matching gifts program is we've opened up a Yammer channel. We found the value in having an internal social channel where we could invite our colleagues to volunteer any updates they would like to share around their volunteering experience. That has been a phenomenal resource, not only to spark inspiration for teams that maybe are struggling during the pandemic to find, ways to be able to support and give back in the community. But it just has opened up a phenomenal conversation about how fulfilling volunteering is.
Do you have a metric for success around engagement or participation? And secondly, what have you found works really well to get that?
For those of you who are sitting in roles where you are directing corporate responsibility or sustainability or social impact initiatives, I would encourage you to think about how to resource into dedicated communications and engagement support. We have had to cultivate that a bit. So we have resourced into that. We have made a targeted effort to drive engagement, whether that's through encouraging colleagues to post, or we are actively posting through our team as well. So it's like any plant, it needs to be watered, right? You need to cultivate it. It needs to be a community that you try to build over time, and you may need to resource into it. I think once that really becomes part of the culture, it just starts to take off.
Do you have a formal process for sort of monitoring whether you're hitting your goals, or is it kind of like, look, the goal was to get it. We have somebody who's kind of overseeing it, but that's it. And now we're kind of moving forward.
Well, one of our sustainability goals is to deliver 20,000 hours of volunteer time from our colleague base globally per year. So we established that goal in 2021. We'll be reporting progress against that in our sustainability reporting this year. We do have a metric, and we're excited to continue to drive towards that 20,000 hour goal.
Let's go back to, it was about this idea of formally volunteering before, during, or after a disaster. So the last thing people want to see are unqualified or unnecessary volunteers, when there's a disaster. But the stat is 3 billion animals died in Australia during the fires. That's staggering. And it seems like there would be a huge need for just bodies to clean off the ducts or whatever, if there's an oil spill or whatever you can imagine it would be. Can you explain a little bit about how this program works, but maybe more importantly, how do you know when's the right time to show up and who to show up with?
I think you've touched on something that's essential, which is having the right partner to help mobilize support and be able to react to what is really needed on the ground. In the case of the Australian bushfires, we did a couple of things. We immediately responded by providing over, several $100,000 of product donations to support the veterinary activities that were happening on the ground. One of the things that we also realized through our partners that needed to happen to provide ongoing support and longevity for the relief efforts was providing access to resources to support veterinary mental well-being. that was highly affected during this crisis. And so we partnered since then on an ongoing basis with Beyond Blue. They're a nonprofit in Australia. They focus on mental health and well-being. Over the last 4 years, our colleagues in Australia have supported Beyond Blue, which ultimately helps reach Australian farmers and veterinarians that are vulnerable to mental health challenges as a result of rural isolation. To answer your question succinctly, you do need partners. You do need to listen to what are the short-term needs, and then what are the long-term needs to sustain the relief that's required.
Do you have a disaster relief team, like a stand-up team ready to kind of deploy?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because what you're describing is similar to the approach we have at Zoetis, which is to enable our local colleagues to make decisions that are in service to what the local customers and community needs. When there are moments of disaster relief, we feel as though the teams are enabled and empowered to be able to take action as they see appropriate. And so they have our full support to, again, operate locally in support of a global impact.
One last question. Given the fact that Zoetis is squarely placed in a leadership role in the industry, this industry, how do you use that wealth of knowledge and insight and connection to inform your community investment? Do you have a little formula? We've talked about the right partnerships. We talked about listening and understanding. We've talked about giving people an opportunity. We've talked about making it accessible during the pandemic. You've covered a lot of space. Do you have like a way to kind of apply that insight formally?
What I think is a resounding sentiment across Zoetis is this respect and acknowledgement of the human-animal bond. And that's something that you can point to data that illustrates the health benefits of pet ownership. The Human Animal Bond Research Institute, also known as HABRI, actually has done incredible work to measure the impact of pet ownership. 87% of physicians said that their patients saw an improved mood and outlook as a result of pet ownership. Same thing with physical well-being, where in studies with non-dog owners, you're less likely to walk, you're less likely to maintain your physical health. So I think that governs so much of what we do, this acknowledgement that there is value in creating that bond. That is a resounding part of what we believe. Then there is this important belief that we've really amplified through our corporate foundation, which is supporting the veterinarians and farmers and advancing opportunity for the people who care for animals. We'll be continuing to drive efforts around the areas of education, well-being, and livelihoods in service of advancing opportunity, for people who are dedicated to caring for animals. And so those are, I think, two things that are important inspiration and are governing our community work today.
It was so great to have you with us. Thank you so much, Jeannette. I really appreciated getting a chance to talk to you. Thanks for sharing everything you did. Anything you want to leave with the audience?
I want to thank everyone for the engagement. I mean, you've had a great turnout. I value the work you're leading, Chris. I think this is such an important conversation. Thank you for opening up the space. Thank you for all the questions. This is fantastic.
All right. Remember, learn, connect, act. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.